The moon rose slowly over the Silverclaw Mountains, vast and pale, its light spilling across jagged peaks and deep pine valleys like a silent blessing or a warning. Lyora felt it the moment the moon cleared the ridge. A tightening in her chest, a pull beneath her ribs, a whisper in her blood that never fully slept. She paused on the stone path leading up to the royal keep and pressed her palm against her sternum, steadying herself. The moon had always affected her more than others. She'd learned long ago not to mention it. Around her, wolves moved in clusters, laughter and growls blending into a low, constant hum. Every pack in the northern realm had answered the Alpha King's call. Banners snapped in the mountain wind, bearing sigils of claw, fang, flame, and frost. Power gathered here tonight, and power always demanded a price. Lyora adjusted the hood of her cloak and continued forward, careful to keep her gaze lowered. She was not dressed for attention. Her gown was simple, pale gray, the fabric soft but unadorned. No jewels, no pack markings. A healer did not need them. Still, she felt eyes on her as she passed through the gates. Some curious, some dismissive, some sharp with calculation. She ignored them all. The royal keep loomed ahead, carved directly into the mountain stone. Firelight glowed through massive archways, illuminating the great hall within. The scent hit her first. Hundreds of wolves, dominance thick in the air, layered with wine, roasted meat, steel, and something darker. Anticipation. The moon convergence happened once every 20 years, called only when the Alpha King deemed it necessary. Alliances were forged here, challenges declared, bloodlines reshaped, and mates chosen. Her fingers curled unconsciously. Not for me, she told herself, never for me. Inside the hall the noise swelled. Long stone tables stretched beneath vaulted ceilings, already crowded with alphas and their entourages. At the far end, raised on a dais of black stone veined with silver, stood the high throne, empty. The Alpha King had not yet arrived. Relief loosened something tight in her lungs. She slipped toward the edges of the hall, staying close to the walls. She was here on duty. Several packs had requested her presence in case of injury during the dominance trials. That was all. She was not here to be seen. She was nearly to the side corridor when the entire hall fell silent. It wasn't sudden. It rolled through the room like a living thing. Conversations dying mid-sentence. Laughter choking off. Chairs scraping stone as wolves stood. Lyora froze. Heavy footsteps echoed from the far entrance. She did not need to look to know who it was. The Alpha King had arrived. King Roken Nightfall strode into the hall like a force of nature barely contained in flesh. He was tall, taller than any other wolf present, his broad shoulders filling the space between the stone pillars. His presence pressed down on the room, not through threat alone but certainty. He belonged here. Dark hair framed a face carved with authority, his expression controlled but sharp-eyed. Gold irises gleamed faintly, catching the firelight as they swept across the hall in a single, assessing glance. Every alpha bowed. Every wolf felt him. Lyora bowed too, head lowered, heart pounding far too hard for someone who claimed indifference. Roken moved toward the dais, exchanging brief nods with the highest-ranking alphas. He acknowledged no one fully. He didn't need to. As he turned, his gaze passed over the hall, and stopped. On her, the impact was physical. Lyora's breath caught painfully as his eyes locked onto her face. She felt exposed, as if the simple hood she wore had dissolved. Heat flared under her skin, sharp and unwelcome. No, she lowered her gaze instantly, pulse roaring in her ears. Across the hall, Roken stilled. Something tugged at him, sudden, violent, unexpected. A sensation like a hook buried deep in his chest, pulling his attention toward one small figure standing near the shadows. He frowned slightly, unused to anything claiming his focus without permission. Then he saw her properly. Pale hair, stillness like snowfall, a presence that did not submit yet did not challenge. His wolf surged forward, snarling low in his mind. Mine. The thought came unbidden, instinctive, dangerous. Roken clenched his jaw and broke eye contact, forcing himself to continue toward the throne. He took his seat, one arm resting casually against the carved stone, posture relaxed. But his awareness never left her. The convergence began with formalities, announcements, oaths, ritual blessings. Roken listened, responded, commanded, all while tracking the healer who tried very hard not to exist. He noticed the way others glanced at her, too long, too interested. Jealousy flickered sharp and hot. Ridiculous, he told himself. He did not even know her name. When the first dominance trial began, wolves cleared space in the center of the hall. Cheers erupted as challengers shifted, claws scraping stone, muscles rippling beneath fur. Lyra took advantage of the distraction and slipped out onto the side balcony, lungs desperate for clean air. The night hit her like a wave. Cold, quiet, moonlit. She leaned against the railing, breathing deeply. Below, the valley glowed with scattered torches, the mountains rising like silent guardians beyond. You fled quickly. Her heart nearly stopped. She turned slowly. King Roken stood a few steps away, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He must have followed her without a sound. My king, she said, bowing quickly. Don't, he replied. She paused, confused, then straightened. He studied her openly now, golden eyes sharp but curious. You're Lyra, he said. A Frostveil. She stiffened. Yes. A healer. Yes, unmated, he added casually. Her breath faltered. It happened. Do you have a mate, he asked. The question echoed louder than the mountain winds. She hesitated just long enough. Not yet, she whispered. Something inside him snapped. Not yet meant possibility. Not yet meant someone else could claim her. Heat flooded his veins, sudden and feral. His wolf surged forward, baring its fangs, raging at the thought of her choosing another. Roken's jaw tightened hard enough to ache. Not yet, he repeated, voice low. Lyra felt the shift in him instantly, the change in the air, the way danger coiled beneath his stillness. I should return inside, she said quickly. No, he said, the word was soft. Final, she looked up, caught by the intensity burning in his eyes. We are not finished, he added. Her pulse thundered. Neither of them noticed the moon climb higher, bright and watching, as ancient forces began to stir. The balcony was quiet, but Lyra's heart raced as if the entire keep had erupted into flames. Roken's gaze bore into her, unrelenting. He did not move closer, but the tension between them was palpable. A taut thread stretched too far, threatening to snap. She began, then stopped, words failed. Usually, she had a calm reply, a practiced deflection, but this was different. Roken stepped forward, slow and deliberate, so she could feel the heat radiating from him even before he reached her. You are not like the others, he said, his voice lower now, almost a growl. You do not fear me. You do not bow as if it is your instinct. Yet you are cautious enough to survive. I observe, Lyra whispered. It is how I keep myself alive. He frowned. A corner of his lips twitched. Was it amusement, irritation, or something else entirely? Lyra could not tell. You observe, he repeated. Yet you hide. You hide behind words, behind gestures, behind humility. Why? Her hands pressed against the stone railing as if anchoring herself to the earth. Because power draws danger, she said simply. I have learned to respect it and fear it. Roken's wolf growled softly in his chest. Fear me? He asked, incredulous. No, she said, her voice steady. Not you. Something inside him snapped again. Then why? He said, stepping closer. Do you pretend to be untouchable? Untouchable until someone else claims you. Her chest tightened. She could feel it now, the raw, almost tangible pull of his wolf. His presence was no longer merely commanding. It was possessive, invasive, yet strangely protective. I have no one, she whispered. No one who would claim me. Not yet, he said, echoing her words. The tension in his voice made her shiver. Do you not see what you do to me? Lyra hesitated, struggling to find words. You make me aware of things I do not wish to feel. Roken's golden eyes narrowed. Awareness is the first step toward desire, he said darkly, and I am tired of patience. Before she could respond, the doors behind them burst open with a gust of wind and a wave of voices. The dominance trials had ended inside, and a challenge had been issued by a rival alpha pack. The hall echoed with excitement and tension. Roken stepped back, controlling himself, but his eyes never left hers. You will be inside, he said quietly. Safe, for now, but no one will touch you. Understand? I understand? Lyra whispered. Even as she returned to the hall, she could feel his eyes following her, a shadow she could not escape. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. The convergence required her presence far more than she anticipated, tending to minor injuries, supervising young wolves, and offering counsel to pack leaders. And yet, everywhere she went, Roken was there. At first, she thought it coincidence he moved from challenge to challenge with absolute command, but soon it became obvious he was watching her. Every glance, every subtle shift of posture, every careful approach was calculated. His jealousy simmered beneath the surface, growing hotter with every alpha that dared glance her way. It culminated the night of the moon ceremony, a ritual that cemented alliances and declared future leaders. Leora was standing near the ceremonial fire, hands pressed together to still them. Around her, wolves danced and circled, flames flickering in their eyes. The smell of smoke and pine, of earth and fur, was intoxicating. Roken appeared behind her as though he had stepped out of the shadows themselves. He placed a hand on the small of her back, warm and unyielding. "You are mine," he whispered, barely audible over the chants and music. She froze, her stomach knotting. "My king," she started, but he pressed a finger to her lips. "No titles," he said, voice low and demanding. "Only truth. You belong to no one else. I will not allow it. Do you understand?" "Yes," she whispered. A part of her trembled, not from fear, but from something far more dangerous: desire, the pull of the bond, the unspoken recognition that they were connected in ways neither fully understood. And then, the first attack came. A shadow moved near the outer gates of the ceremonial ground. A knife flashed. A scream pierced the air. Leora turned, heart lurching, and found herself face to face with an assassin, one of many who had infiltrated the convergence under the guise of a visiting wolf. Before she could react, Roken was there, shifting mid-step, his form blurring and reshaping into a massive black wolf with golden eyes ablaze. In seconds, the attacker was subdued, sprawled on the ground, his weapon useless against the Alpha King's wrath. Leora's hands shook. She realized then that her fear was not of Roken, not of him alone. It was the world she had entered by standing beside him, a world of politics, power, and constant threat. Roken shifted back to human form, his gaze locking with hers. "Did they hurt you?" he asked, voice low, dangerous. "No," she said, swallowing hard. "I am fine." "You are not fine," he said, "and no one will hurt you, not while I draw breath." For the first time, the thought entered her mind fully. She was not just a healer. She was now a prize, a target, a beacon for power and danger alike. And Roken, jealous, possessive, terrifying Roken, would not let her go. But the next morning, whispers of the incident had spread through the convergence like wildfire. Some alphas respected Roken's vigilance. Others resented it. But Leora noticed something more important. She had felt something within herself awaken. A strength, a fire, a recognition of power she had not acknowledged. And it was tied to him. He watched her now across the hall, not hiding, not retreating. Jealousy simmered in every glance, but so did something else: protection, longing, and an intensity she could no longer ignore. The bond between them, however undefined, had begun to declare itself in ways neither could control. It was only the beginning. Roken's jealousy intensifies, Leora's hidden powers begin to emerge, and rival packs start challenging both of them. The bond between them becomes more undeniable. The dawn over Silverclaw Mountains was not gentle. Mist clung to the valley like a living thing, curling around trees, pooling in crevices, hiding shapes that seemed to watch the world awake. Leora stepped out onto the balcony again, her fingers wrapped around the cold stone. The events of the night before had left her restless, her blood thrumming in a rhythm she did not understand. Roken had remained at her side until the last possible moment, his eyes never leaving her, his hand brushing hers just once, a touch that burned deeper than fire. She could still feel it. She hated that she could. The sound of heavy footsteps broke her reverie. She did not need to turn. "Do you ever sleep?" Roken's voice was low, questioning, not accusing but close enough to make her chest flutter. "I sleep," she said, though the truth was thin, "just not well." "You think too much," he said, stepping closer. The air around him seemed to hum, carrying the raw power of a wolf at the height of its dominance. "You think about danger, about what you must hide, about what others might do to you, but never about what you allow yourself to feel." Leora turned fully toward him, meeting his golden gaze. For a moment, the world narrowed, leaving only the two of them, the rising sun painting his silhouette in gold and shadow. I cannot," she whispered. "Not yet. Not yet," he repeated, teeth tightening. "I hate those words. Something primal, feral inside him rose, a growl that shook his chest and resonated through the air. His wolf wanted her, wanted to claim her, wanted to mark her as his alone, and it would not wait. "You are mine," he said finally, and this time it was not a suggestion. It was a statement, a warning, and a promise all at once. Her breath hitched. "I do not speak," he ordered softly, stepping so close that the heat of him pressed into her. "Just feel, and know that nothing and no one will take you from me." Before she could reply, the sound of alarms shattered the fragile moment. A horn blared from the valley below, a signal no one ignored. Wolves barked, rushed to positions, ears twitching, nostrils flaring. Roken's jaw clenched. "Trouble," he growled. His wolf surged in anticipation, and instinctively, Leora's senses tuned to his. It was not just a challenge from another pack. This was more coordinated, silent, deliberate, dangerous. "Stay here," Roken said, his hand pressing against the small of her back once more. "No one will touch you?" You will stay," he snapped, his control breaking slightly under the swell of his wolf. "Or you will regret it." And before she could protest, he was gone, moving faster than the eye could follow, a shadow among shadows as he led the royal guard toward the disturbance. Leora's stomach twisted. She had healed many wounded wolves, had seen death in its cruelest forms, but never had she faced the possibility of losing someone who mattered more than her own safety. Her hands trembled. A presence brushed against her senses, a soft, familiar warmth, a heartbeat that was not her own but intertwined with hers. The bond had begun to awaken more fully than before. She could feel Roken's anger, his fear, his longing, and the dangerous depths of his jealousy. It terrified her, and yet, part of her ached at the thought of him in danger. She did not notice the other figure approaching until he was beside her. "Leora," whispered Cal, the young wolf from her own pack who had been assigned to assist her during the convergence. "Something's wrong, Roken. It's not just a challenge." They knew exactly where to strike. Her brow furrowed. "Ooh." Cal shook his head. "I don't know yet. But you need to be careful." "I will," she said automatically, though the truth was she felt powerless. Until now, she had always been the healer, the observer, the quiet presence. But Roken's absence, his need to protect her, forced something new inside her, an awakening she had tried to suppress. The rest of the day passed in tense vigilance. Wolves arrived from surrounding regions, rumors spreading of a coalition forming against the Silver Claw throne, and everywhere she turned her senses were alert, anticipating every flicker of movement, every subtle threat. Night fell, and the moon rose once more fuller, brighter than she had ever seen it. Leora felt a pull she could no longer deny, a connection growing in intensity toward the king she had thought impossible to reach. Roken returned to her balcony, bloodied but unbowed. His presence was immense, the scent of battle clinging to him, and yet he immediately sought her out, brushing the edge of her cloak with a gentle, possessive touch. "You should not have been here," he growled, though the edge of relief softened his voice. "You are not safe in this place. Not while I am distracted." "I was not," she said softly, "but I could not feel what I felt." He frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" Leora met his gaze, something fierce igniting in her own eyes. "The bond, I feel it. Between us stronger than I thought possible. And I think it is responding to you." Roken's golden eyes widened, just slightly, before narrowing again. "Responding to me," he echoed, almost incredulously. "Do you understand what that means?" "I think I do," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It means we are connected, that I cannot deny it. That," she stopped, shivering, and looked away, "that I cannot stay away from you." He closed the distance between them then, hands cupping her face. The possessive tension that had simmered for days ignited fully. "No one will take you from me," he said, voice fierce, golden eyes glowing like molten fire in the moonlight. "You are mine, Leora. Do you understand?" "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. I understand." And with that admission, something unspoken solidified between them. It was not a mating, not yet. But it was the first true spark, the acknowledgement of bond, of desire, of destiny entwined with danger. The night held them in its embrace, the moonlight shimmering across the balcony, the distant sounds of the valley below a reminder of the war yet to come. And somewhere deep within, Leora realized that life as she had known it, quiet, observant, careful, was over. From this moment on, nothing would ever be the same. The wind howled through the peaks of the Silverclaw Mountains, carrying a chill that seemed unnatural for the season. Leora shivered as she stepped out onto the balcony at dawn, feeling the lingering pulse of the bond with Roken still thrumming in her chest. She had never experienced anything like it. The pull between them was no longer subtle. It was a force that dictated her thoughts, her heartbeat, her very breath. Even when apart, she felt him as if he were another part of herself. And yet, she could not ignore the danger. The valley below was already stirring. Rival packs had sensed weakness after the failed assassination attempt. Rumors spread that Frostvale blood ran through the healer, that her lineage carried ancient powers once thought lost. Leora's fingers tingled as she wrapped her cloak tighter around her. Powers she had kept hidden, never tested, never revealed, were beginning to awaken. She had known, deep down, that her Frostvale blood was special, but she had always suppressed it, afraid of what it might bring. Until now, a sudden flash of blue light sparked in the courtyard below, catching her attention. She leaned forward, eyes widening. A small group of wolves had engaged in combat, and the frost seemed to cling unnaturally to their claws, their breaths misting even in the warm morning. Something in her stirred, a recognition, a calling. Leora. A voice called behind her, low and commanding. She turned. Roken stood there, arms crossed, gaze fierce. He had sensed it too. He always sensed it. You feel it? He said, his voice steady but tinged with awe. Yes, she admitted. It is responding. Then we cannot hide it, he said. Not from them. Not from you. Leora swallowed hard. She had spent her life hiding, surviving quietly among humans and wolves alike, using her skills to heal, to protect. But now, under Roken's gaze, with the bond blazing between them, hiding felt impossible. A tremor ran through the air, soft at first, then stronger. Frost spiraled up from the valley floor, swirling around the attacking wolves. They yelped, claws slipping on the sudden ice that formed beneath them, and Leora's heart raced as her instincts pushed her forward. Roken moved beside her without a sound, placing a protective hand on her back. Control it, he instructed, his golden eyes fixed on hers. You are stronger than you know. She drew a shaky breath, focusing on the energy coursing through her veins. The Frostvale magic responded like a living entity, bending to her will, swirling around her hands, coiling through her limbs. In seconds, she had frozen the attacker's footing entirely, stopping the skirmish without shedding a single drop of blood. The assembled wolves gawked. Whispers spread, fear, respect, awe. Some alphas bowed instinctively. Others turned, plotting vengeance. Roken's jaw tightened. Do you see? He said, voice low. They underestimate you at their peril, and no one touches you, not while I live. She turned to him, chest heaving. It's powerful. Too powerful. I don't know if I can control it fully. You will, he said, his hand brushing against hers briefly, grounding her. And I will be here. Always. But you must trust yourself, trust your power, trust us. The word hung between them, Hus, a promise and a challenge. Hours later, political maneuvering reached a boiling point. Rival packs had gathered, meeting secretly in the valley below. Leora could feel the tension even from the keep, a swirling mix of resentment, envy, and fear. Some sought alliances, others sought war. Roken's response was measured, commanding, and lethal when necessary. He moved among the gathering packs like a shadow of authority, making his intentions clear. Any threat to Leora would be met with swift retribution. Jealousy flared visibly whenever any alpha lingered too long near her, and more than once, Leora noticed the subtle growl in his throat or the way his eyes would narrow at the smallest perceived slight. I do not want to intimidate them, she whispered to him as they returned to the balcony that night. But they respect you too much for that to be a problem. Intimidation is not my goal, he said softly. Possession is. My wolf does not tolerate anyone near what is mine. And you are mine. Her stomach fluttered despite herself. She had expected dominance, expected pride, perhaps even fear, but not the raw, consuming desire in his words. Not the way it made her pulse race, her breath hitch, her body respond even without touch. She started, then hesitated. I think I am beginning to understand. The bond, the power, and the connection between us, Douse. Roken took her face in his hands again, golden eyes unwavering. Then do not fight it, he said. Do not run from it. You cannot, and you would not want to. Leora's lips trembled as the reality of their situation settled fully. Her secret bloodline, the Frostvale magic, the danger surrounding the convergence, the political scheming of rival pacts. It all paled against the truth her heart, her soul, her very being, was now irrevocably tied to the Alpha King, and he could not let her go. That night under the full moon's watchful gaze, Leora allowed herself to feel it fully, the bond, the magic, the burgeoning desire that had been simmering since the moment he first asked if she had a mate. She closed her eyes as the wind brushed her hair, and for the first time, she felt completely, terrifyingly, unashamedly alive. Below them, the valley lay in uneasy silence. The rival packs would not rest. The convergence was far from over, and danger lurked in every shadow. But for Leora and Roken, in that moonlit moment, nothing else mattered. They were bound, by blood, by magic, by destiny, and by the feral, unyielding claim of the Alpha King. Perfect? Here's air paired fire, where the stakes escalate. Rival packs attack, Leora and Roken are drawn into battle, and their bond grows even stronger, full of tension, danger, and emotional depth. The night air was sharp, electric, alive with tension. The valley below the Silverclaw Keep had erupted into chaos. Rival packs, sensing weakness and emboldened by whispers of Leora's Frostvale blood, had united in an attempt to challenge Roken's reign. Leora stood beside him on the balcony, the wind whipping her hair across her face. Her heart thudded in sync with his. The bond between them thrummed like a living heartbeat, fiery and demanding. They're more organized than I expected, she murmured, her hands tightening around the railing. Roken's eyes scanned the valley, calculating, golden irises sharp as daggers. They underestimated me, he said, low and dangerous. And they underestimated you. She met his gaze. I don't feel ready. He stepped closer, his hand brushing against hers, grounding her, his presence a steadying force amid the storm. You are more than ready, he said, more than anyone knows. Trust the bond, Leora. Trust yourself and trust me. A low rumble rolled through the valley, the sound of wolf growls, hooves, and claws on stone. Torches flickered as the first wave of enemies surged toward the keep. Roken's wolf growled, deep and resonant, the sound vibrating in Leora's chest. Then he shifted. In a blur of motion, Roken's human form dissolved into a massive black wolf, golden eyes blazing, muscles rippling under fur like shadowed steel. The air around him seemed to bend to his will, and Leora felt the pull of his dominance, raw and overwhelming. You stay here, he growled. No one touches you. I fight with you, she said, her voice firm. I will not stand aside while they come for you or me. Roken froze just for a heartbeat, golden eyes locked onto hers. The possessive intensity, the jealousy, the desire, it all collided in one breathless moment. Then he growled softly and nodded. Together, he said, and together, they leapt into the fray. Leora's hands glowed with icy light, her Frostvale magic unfurling like ribbons of frost and wind. The first wave of attackers skidded on frozen ground. She conjured, claws slipping, bodies flailing. She felt the magic flowing through her, responsive to her emotions, to the bond pulsing between her and Roken. He moved beside her, unstoppable, shifting from wolf to human mid-battle with supernatural fluidity, striking with claws, teeth, and steel. His possessiveness flared each time an enemy even looked at her, his jealousy fueling his ferocity. I will not let them touch you, he roared, catching a charging alpha by the shoulders and hurling him into the frozen ground. The battle raged for hours. Leora realized with both awe and fear that she had never fought like this before, not merely to heal, not merely to defend, but with raw, lethal power coursing through her. Her magic bent the very elements to her will, creating walls of frost, piercing shards of ice, and gusts of wind that threw enemies off balance. All the while, Roken stayed close, golden eyes tracking her every move, claws ready to intervene, wolf instincts screaming at him to protect, possess, dominate. At one critical moment, a spear came flying toward Leora from the shadows. Reflexively, she shifted her hands, summoning a wall of ice that shattered the spear midair. Roken growled, pouncing, fangs sinking into the alpha who had thrown it, and dragging him to the ground. You are mine, Roken snapped, his voice a growl even as a wolf. I am yours, she whispered back, breathless, feeling the bond between them ignite fully under fire and threat. By midnight, the battle waned. Ravel packs retreated, broken, humiliated, and terrified. Lyora and Roken stood together on the balcony, overlooking the valley where torches still flickered like dying stars. You were magnificent, Roken said, shifting back to human form, his hand brushing against hers. His golden eyes glowed, fierce and intimate. Do you understand? You are mine. Mine in every way a mate can be. And I am yours. Lyora's breath caught. The adrenaline, the fear, the bond, it all surged in one overwhelming wave. Yes, she whispered, voice trembling, I am yours. Roken stepped closer, golden eyes blazing, possessive and tender all at once. Not yet, he teased, a rare smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. No, she whispered, the word soft but certain. Not yet, because now it is forever. He captured her lips in a kiss that was fierce, claiming, and yet tender beneath the storm of their emotions. The moonlight bathed them, the winds carrying the scent of frost and fire, danger and desire. Below them the valley lay silent at last. Rivals would not rise again easily. The convergence had been tested, but so had their bond, and neither Lyora nor Roken would ever be the same. The Alpha King had snapped with jealousy, yes, but in that moment he had also recognized what he could not deny. She was his, he was hers, and together they were unstoppable. The keep was quiet in the pre-dawn hours, but Lyora could feel the pulse of the world around her. Every heartbeat, every rustle of wind through the trees, every subtle shift of energy carried the weight of destiny. She could feel it deep in her bones. The bond between her and Roken was no longer something subtle or restrained. It had grown, fierce and unrelenting, a living force that demanded acknowledgement. Roken appeared silently behind her, stepping onto the balcony with the ease of a predator who owned the world. Even in human form, the aura of dominance radiated off him like heat from molten stone. You feel it too? He said softly, eyes tracking hers. The bond, it's stronger now than it has ever been. Yes? She whispered, turning to face him. The frostlight shimmered faintly around her hands, responding to the intensity of her emotions. It responds to you, to us. I can feel your power, your presence, in every part of me. Roken's jaw tightened. Mine, he said, voice low, growling with possessiveness. And I will not let anyone claim you. Her heart raced. She had always feared the power of her Frostvale lineage, but now, under the moon's glow and his gaze, it felt unstoppable. The energy pulsed through her, answering to the connection she shared with Roken, ready to defend, ready to claim, ready to bind. I am yours, she whispered, voice trembling. Completely, no more, not yet. Roken's lips curved in a fierce, almost feral smile. Finally, he said. He stepped closer, golden eyes blazing. Finally, you understand. Finally, the bond is complete. Before she could respond, the distant horn of warning echoed through the valley. Rival packs had not surrendered. They were regrouping, planning another strike. This time they were more organized, more cunning, and the convergence itself was in danger. Roken's wolf growled low, the sound vibrating in her chest, sending shivers down her spine. He shifted instantly, towering over her in black fur, claws gleaming in the moonlight, golden eyes fierce and protective. Stay with me, he commanded, his voice a mix of warning and longing. No one touches you while I draw a breath. I'm not afraid, she said, her own power flaring, ice and wind twisting around her like living elements. We fight together. Roken's ears flattened slightly at her words, a mix of jealousy and pride igniting in him. Together, he agreed. And nothing will separate us. The battle began with a sudden rush. Rival wolves surged toward the keep, torches blazing, teeth bared, claws striking. But Lyora and Roken were unstoppable. She summoned walls of ice to shield the gates, piercing shards that struck like arrows, winds that hurled attackers into one another. Every movement was precise, controlled, yet wild in its beauty. She had never felt power like this before, not merely in battle, but in unity with another soul. Roken moved beside her, shifting between wolf and human seamlessly, fangs flashing, hands and claws striking with lethal precision. Every rival who dared approach her felt the twin forces of their combined power, a bond so strong it left no room for survival. Your bond is alive, one of the attacking alphas hissed as he skidded across the icy ground. It's unnatural. Yes, Roken said, baring his fangs, and it's mine. Hours passed like moments. The rival packs faltered, broken and terrified by the overwhelming force of their unity. Lyora could feel herself changing, evolving, her Frostveil powers reaching new heights, responding not only to danger but to Roken's presence, to the raw desire and possessiveness that radiated from him. Finally, the battle ended. Wolves retreated, leaving the keep and its rulers standing victorious, powerful, untouchable. Lyora's chest heaved, exhaustion mixing with exhilaration, but her focus remained on Roken. He stepped closer, brushing snow and frost from her hair. "Do you understand now?" he asked, voice low, intimate, commanding. "Do you understand the bond, the truth?" "Yes," she whispered, barely daring to breathe. "I understand, and I am yours." Completely. Roken's eyes softened, a rare tenderness breaking through his dominant ferocity. He cupped her face in his hands, golden eyes shimmering in the moonlight. "Then let it begin," he said. And under the silver glow of the full moon, they embraced fully, the bond igniting into something irreversible, undeniable, and eternal. Their kiss was not gentle. It was fire and frost, desire and dominance, claiming and surrender all at once. The Frostveil magic intertwined with his wolf's power, creating a pulse of energy that swept through the keep, illuminating the night sky with ethereal light. For Lyora, there was no fear, only the undeniable truth of connection, of belonging, of destiny fulfilled. And for Roken, there was no jealousy, no hesitation, only the fierce, consuming certainty that she was his mate, his equal, and the only soul who could match him in power and passion. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, hearts racing, the world seemed still. The moon shone down on a valley at peace, a kingdom united, and a bond that could never be broken. "You are mine," Roken whispered again, softer now, almost reverent. "And you are mine," Lyora replied, smiling despite exhaustion, a warmth spreading through her she had never known before. The Alpha King's jealousy had driven him to claim, but it was love, trust, and destiny that bound them together. And nothing, no rival, no danger, no world, could ever undo it.